What was the most unexpected answer you've personally had to? Where are they now? She and I went out a few times in high school, but nothing came of it. I ran into her years later and talked briefly, exchanged contact info and parted. I asked her out, but she kept putting it off, and eventually I stopped asking. Maybe I was never the kind of guy she was interested in, and didn't know how to properly say no, so maybe she gave me excuses, hoping I'd get the hint. I looked her up some time later and found out she changed her last name. Not terribly uncommon when someone gets married. Oh, she got married. Well, good for her, I guess. I'll just go check out her Facebook profile and yep, there's an album of honeymoon pictures. And there's her wife. That explains a lot. A lot. This is amazing. What were dates with her like? They were fun, but she always seemed just a bit aloof. Once, I went to a concert with her and a restaurant afterwards. She was friendly and funny, but physically kept her distance from me. Looking back is like watching a movie with a twist ending on a second viewing. You catch little clues you didn't see the first time and wonder if it's significant. One of my good friends in grade school was raised by extremely religious and uptight parents. We're talking the kind of parents who wouldn't let us play Final Fantasy because it had magic in it, and that was the work of the devil. He moved away in like 6th grade. Found him on MySpace back when that was the main social media thing. Dude is now about as flamboyantly gay as can possibly be. I'm sure his parents are thrilled. Is it somehow mean or bad for me to say that I always am happy when I hear about this kind of story? Because I always hope it ends up that the parents choose to open their eyes and minds instead of being the kind of jerks who disown their kids? Unfortunately, I think that happens far less than people think. My friend came out to his highly religious Hispanic family, and years later they still resent him for it. My dad looked up someone he used to be good friends with when he was younger. Turns out he is the creator of a game called Club Penguin, and he sold that game to Disney and got around $100 million. Every couple years, it crosses my mind to try to find my daughter's father. We split when she was 8 months old, he was abusive, and just after her first birthday, he disappeared, never to be heard from again. This past time I thought to Google him, I found a court case that laid out a lot of details about his troubled childhood. I knew he had a mentally disabled mother, a much older father, 60 years old when he was born, a somewhat estranged sister, and had been bounced around several foster homes and group homes, all leading to a drug problem in his teens. When I met him, he was a quiet, shy, sweet guy, and he worked his ass off to help take care of our daughter before his mind broke and he leapt head first off the deep end out of nowhere. I later found out he has borderline personality disorder. Anyway, this court case was between his parents and the state laying out all his problems, and why he needed to never be in his parents' care again. There was extreme starvation, beatings, multiple molestations, just the absolute worst you can imagine. It went on to describe how this all caused him to attempt suicide and self-harm at 8 years old, as well as acting inappropriate sexually with himself and others. One incident was described as he got in trouble for something really small at school, and he became so uncontrollable that he had to be carried to a safe room. While the adults were discussing what to do with him and making important phone calls to his caseworkers, he stripped naked, engaged in fecal smearing, and then screamed through the door to just fuck me and get it over with. I just sat there reading in complete shock. I mean, this was horror movie level shit. I had no clue that he'd been through so much. It made me feel very conflicted. I felt enormous pity and sadness for the child still inside him, gut-wrenching, painful sadness. On the other hand, I was thankful that I got myself and especially my daughter away from him. The last record of him I know of is that he is drugged out and homeless. There was a guy that I wrestled in high school when he was a freshman, who ended up being a 3-time state champion. Everyone said he could wrestle at any college in the nation. I googled his name a couple years ago and found out he was in prison for raping his best friend's mother while he was intoxicated. 2 of my high school classmates became Olympic gymnasts. One high school crush had a nervous breakdown and brandished a knife at a police officer. He shot her. She survived and eventually opened a massage parlor in Vegas. A high school classmate, who I always thought was a bit of a dick, became a police officer. He is currently in prison for participating in a drive-by shooting. A childhood friend moved away and we lost touch. He became an actor, playing Bulk, on Mighty Morphin Power Rangers. Where did you grow up? More importantly, where's this massage parlor, exactly? I googled my Chinese ex-girlfriend and came up with hundreds of people who were not her. High school friend, graduated 2010, with a 1-year-old child, waiting for her boyfriend to be released from prison so they can get married. He was convicted for raping another girl. He must have used that classic line on her. It's not cheating if it's not consensual. The sly dog. But babe, I swear, she really didn't want it. One of my best friends in high school is now in the biggest rock band of my country. Every time I see him on TV in his slick rock outfits, I see the 16-year-old him, ponytail in his neck, old woolen sweater to his knees and army boots. I texted him yesterday when he played a live TV show. I got a text back about 1 minute after they finished. It's very surreal. Who? They are called Moke. It's the Dutch band. I got mugged by a guy I went to primary school with. When I visited New Zealand a while back, I stopped by a bookstore and picked up an old hardback copy of Lord Jim, by Joseph Conrad dated 1928, with a to Lennox Douglas from J.E.C. on the first page. If you're not familiar with Lord Jim, the gist of the plot is this. A young man is crewing on a ratty old transport ship when it has an accident, and is expected to sink. The crew, including Jim, pile into the only lifeboat and escape. However, the boat does not sink and they are all put on trial and labeled cowards for life. Jim spends his years trying to be a good and brave man in the far corners of the world to atone. And he dies young, in a blaze of glory, so to speak. Anyway, I googled Lennox Douglas. 13 to 14 years after receiving this book as a gift, he found himself serving as a crew member on a transport ship in a convoy trying to evacuate Allied troops from Greece. The Luftwaffe sunk his ship. 2 destroyers stayed behind to help survivors of the wreck, and both of them were also sunk within hours. There were virtually no survivors. The lifeboats were all strafed and sunk as well. So, I guess, I honestly don't know how to feel. I haven't figured out the moral yet. It's not just coincidence, it's not appropriate, it's just bizarre and unsettling and sad. Maybe a little toast for bravery. The first girl I ever had a big crush on in 6th or 7th grade believes that December 21st really is the end of the world. Last I checked, she had moved to Brazil, bought a house, a used Porsche, and racked up $30,000 to $40,000 in credit card debt. She hasn't worked a day in just over a year. December 22nd is going to be a rough day for a lot of people. I googled my first grade crush and discovered a long list of arrests and his untimely death a few months ago. A friend who everyone thought was an idiot is a millionaire. I'm really happy for him. I never thought he was an idiot. You can still be an idiot and be a millionaire. Impossible. Just ask Donald Trump. He's a billionaire. As I recall, he once tried to sue an author for calling him a millionaire in a book. I recently found my best friend from 2nd grade on FB and discovered she is now a very proud stripper. This is fine and all, but what is shocking is that when we were kids, I was the overtly weird and sexual one. She was so innocent that this discovery was a bit jarring. I've been debating whether or not to just show up at the strip club, buy a lap dance, and make it awkward. Do it. Just do it. And come back to deliver the story. Thank you. Not as crazy as some stories here, but I had a friend during my teenage years that I nearly hung out daily with. We always hung around in skate parks and smoked weed together and had a good time. She was a good friend but moved away at age 17. Lost contact with her, which was partially my fault, but that's another story. Contacted her about 2 years ago again if she wanted to hang out and smoke a little, like in the old days. Got a response and we met and I started smoking. She looked me in the eyes and told me, "I am a cop nowadays." Was kind of strange to see my old friend that was into the punk scene and generally didn't like cops too much being a cop. Did she bust you for smoking? No, she didn't bust me. Did she still smoke with you? Not on this certain occasion. But one day it happened. It was at a party at my house. People sort of avoided her because they didn't feel comfortable that a cop was around. I had some drinks with her, and she asked me if I had anything to smoke. I told sure and got the necessary materials, and she asked if we could go to the outside as she didn't feel comfortable. So we went into the garden and sat down on a small little wall which offered a great view. She tried to roll one but failed, so I took over, rolled one up and smoked with her. We sat there for quite some time smoking and overlooking the lake and enjoying the company of each other. Very nice kid I went to middle school with took a bunch of acid and then beat 2 homeless people to death with his bare hands. He did this when he was 16. My aunt gave up a child for adoption because of how young she was when he was born. 20 years later we found out he became an NFL player for the Chargers. A few years ago, I was at my mom's house thumbing through the paper, and I happened to see my 9th grade crush's name in the obituaries. This was a beautiful girl, nice as she could be, and I was just too shy to talk with her. Some 30 years later, her husband shot and killed her. I grew up with a girl from elementary school to grade 11. We were never close, but we had a bunch of classes together. Decently connected with my family. Smart, beautiful, popular. Her mom was great too, used to clean our elementary school in the mornings. Haven't seen her in a few years, but I found out her mom had been going crazy. Till the point that one night she walked up behind the girl and slit her throat. Nicked her carotid artery, but thankfully she made it. Caught her mom and she's being charged. This kid I knew in high school always seemed like he was a few cans shy of a 6-pack. Sweet guy, but he acted like he was always high or high-overed and in general seemed a bit inane. Forward to now, friend him on FB and it turns out he's a local newscaster with a journalism degree and competes in professional ballroom dancing. He constantly posts really smart, witty things and in general has his life together, way more than I would have expected. Chatting with him, I learned that he never really felt like he had any need to be himself in high school because people were so shallow anyway. So he played a monkey-like character at school and at home practiced his ballroom dancing, wrote articles for online publications under a pseudonym, and I can only assume, sat around listening to classical music wearing a top hat and a monocle and sipping scotch like a sir. You just never really know people. Do you have a similar story? Leave a comment and subscribe to the channel if you want to see more videos like this one.